Two sets of radar warning receivers shriek in unison as 1040 rolls around. Sassy-11 and Sassy-12, a pair of U.S. Air Force B-52H Stratofortresses, cut through the South China Sea at 30,000 feet, holding steady on a course that's meant to look utterly unremarkable. For the past 2 hours, nothing has disturbed the night. Then the threat board doesn't just flicker, it blooms. A single contact appears 55 nautical miles distant. Closure rate better than 600 knots, eating the distance between Dallas and Fort Worth in 3 minutes. Seconds later, the picture sharpens into what every bomber crew recognizes instantly. Fighter radar in acquisition mode. The intercept is hot. The aircraft commander's voice cuts through the interphone with orders to maintain heading, maintain course. A bomber task force runs on predictability. The whole operation depends on looking like exactly what you are. Boring, unthreatening. The kind of flight plan that says a professional Air Force has the controls.
That's the theory, anyway. The contact doesn't care about theories. It closes at speeds that turn friendliness into a liability. 2.5 miles back, the wingman's crew picks up the same emitter half a beat later. Now 2 sets of eyes track one threat through the black, reading identical displays, and neither bomber so much as trembles. This is what a properly flown task force looks like, right up until it stops being one. The radar tone screaming into both electronic warfare officers' headsets comes from the AN/ALR-46, the B-52's first shield. A passive antenna array that listens across 12 to 18 gigahertz and sorts up to 16 radars simultaneously by the rhythm and pattern of their pulses. The moment this one keyed up, the system had already assigned it a name. Type 1493, the radar mounted in China's J-11 flanker. Visual range hasn't even been achieved, and the bomber already knows precisely who's climbing to intercept. Minutes later, the fighter appears on the nose camera, and what the aircraft commander sees is unmistakable. A J-11 clawing up from the bomber's 6 o'clock. Twin engines glowing molten white in the infrared, like coals burning in a dark fireplace. The Shenyang J-11, China's reverse-engineered Su-27 flanker. Twin WS-10A engines pumping 58,000 pounds of combined thrust. Mach 2.35 ceiling. 1,800 nautical mile combat radius. 4 PL-15 beyond visual range missiles slung on the rails, each one purpose-built to kill bombers operating outside visual range. 46 tons of fighter, crewed by one of the People's Liberation Army's finest pilots. The pair of turreted optics under the bomber's chin belong to the electro-optical viewing system, a heat camera and low-light television locked into a single ball. On a moonless night, that thermal feed transforms complete darkness into something nearly resembling daylight, good enough to extract a fighter from the black at extended range. Think of it as a high-end Ring doorbell camera bolted to the nose of a strategic bomber. Except instead of catching porch thieves, it's intercepting fighters sneaking through the dark. Every frame flows straight to tape. The B-52 crew has eyes on the flanker long before the flanker has eyes on them. The picture tells them his closure rate says he has no intention of stopping. The aircraft commander has half a second to decide. He could dump a wing, slide off course, open the gap. No one would question the call. At 10 feet and 600 knots of closure, one wrong twitch sends 2 large airplanes into the water as wreckage. He holds course anyway. At the final instant, the J-11 snaps his nose up and threads beneath Sassy-11's fuselage. So close, both pilots watch the flanker's belly fill their windscreen, before it flashes past. Then the wake arrives. A wall of violently churned air hammers the lead bomber like a fist. 488,000 pounds of Stratofortress gets thrown through 12 degrees of bank before the commander can wrestle control back. Autopilot disengages. The stick shaker hammers under his palms. The horizon cartwheels across the glass. And honestly, that's the kind of moment that separates the routine from the remarkable. The B-52H Stratofortress carries 8 Pratt & Whitney TF-33 turbofans, displaces 488,000 pounds gross weight, and stretches 8,800 nautical miles unrefueled. Cruise speed, 523 miles per hour, coast to coast from Los Angeles to New York in 5 hours flat. First flight came in 1961. These airframes are scheduled to keep flying past 2050. The newest example on the ramp is older than most of the pilots flying it. But right now, number 4 engine sucks in the disrupted air and stumbles. Fuel-air ratio collapses. The computer automatically cuts it to prevent a flameout, then spins it straight into an automatic relight sequence. The pilot hauls 488,000 pounds of aluminum back to level, while the EWO never lifts his hands from the recorder controls. 6 seconds later, number 4 runs clean. Wings return to level. Heading hasn't shifted a degree. Every electromagnetic scrap that fighter just radiated, search pulses, IFF transponder squawk, data link chirp to his ground controller, is already embedded in the bomber's memory, time-stamped to the millisecond. The Chinese pilot thinks he just sent a message. He did, just not the one Beijing intended. He just burned through a sortie's worth of fuel to hand America intelligence that would cost a fortune to obtain any other way. 2 large aircraft that just brushed within 10 feet of a mid-air collision have one natural instinct: break formation, get low, get clear. These two do none of that. The EWO maintains absolute calm. The only question worth asking is why. The J-11 climbs back to altitude, rolls level, and tucks himself into a formation barely 130 feet off the lead bomber's left wing, tight enough to count rivets. He's not finished. He wants to be seen. He wants to be felt. Most importantly, he needs that bomber crew sweating. From his vantage point, the Chinese pilot sees one B-52 and one only, the glow of 8 engines, the silhouette of the lead pilot's head behind the canopy glass. What he doesn't see, what he isn't even considering, is a second bomber, 2.5 miles in trail, offset just enough to stay outside his awareness. He's decided this is a one-on-one engagement. It isn't. At that distance, his radar stops being a contact and becomes a fire hose. The EWO's spectrum display doesn't blip. It floods. Radar pulses, IFF squawking, data link chatter streaming back to his ground controller. Every transmitter the flanker owns lighting up simultaneously. Behind the EWO sits the AN/ALR-20, the bomber's wide-spectrum eavesdropping receiver, a wide-angle security camera that records every signal in a 200-mile bubble and tags each one with point of origin, strength, and type. The ALR-46 screams when something dangerous activates. The ALR-20 sits quietly in the corner, cataloging the entire room. At 130 feet, the flanker isn't a guest across the room. He's standing at the microphone, with his pockets turned inside out. On a separate frequency, the Chinese pilot cannot hear. The wingman's aircraft commander makes his own quiet calculation. He eases his throttles up a couple of percentage points and lets his bomber drift forward and inboard, gaining on the lead a few feet per second. The movement hides in plain sight, far too gradual for a pilot whose attention is welded to the lead cockpit. Over the next 90 seconds, the trailing B-52 closes from trail position to half a mile, sliding into a slot the flanker has no idea exists. He's boxed between two bombers and aware of exactly one of them. Then the wingman's EWO calls the fighter's next move before the fighter makes it. He keys the radio. The J-11 is about to break right and reposition. A breath later, it does exactly that. Each bomber's antenna catches the same pulse, separated by a hair, and that hair is enough to triangulate his position down to the meter. Two cell towers pinning a phone neither could find alone. The fusion track refreshes twice per second. The rate of bearing change across the formation betrays his next turn before he executes it. He cannot twitch without getting measured from two angles simultaneously. And every time he hides one side of himself, he simply exposes another. The flanker slides back onto the lead's wing and holds station. Tonight, he's the most thoroughly mapped aircraft in the Western Pacific, and the only pilot up here who doesn't know it. The undernose turret swivels, locks onto the flanker's exhaust, and as the pilot works his throttles to maintain formation power, military setting, then a kick of afterburner, then back off again, the infrared camera records the full thermal signature at every power setting. That heat fingerprint belongs to the WS-10A, China's domestic replacement for the original Su-27's Russian engines. Roughly 29,100 pounds of thrust per engine, and a jet engine's thermal signature is as unique as a human voice. Its exact thermal profile at military and afterburner power has been one of the most closely guarded secrets in the People's Liberation Army Air Force. The kind of data Beijing would strongly prefer the West never measured. Imagine hunting a specific singer's voice for 2 decades, and then one night he walks up to your microphone and serenades you at point-blank range for 10 solid minutes. Every heat-seeking missile in America's inventory is about to receive a software update, and the Chinese pilot just volunteered for the focus group. He's collecting intelligence too. That little dome forward of his canopy is a passive infrared tracker staring straight back at 8 glowing exhausts. What's he learning? Honestly, almost nothing. The B-52 first flew when his grandfather was in grade school, and Chinese intelligence has dissected this airframe more thoroughly than anything in their own inventory. He's confirming details that have sat in technical manuals since before he was born. The bombers are walking away with a vault. He's walking away with a refresher course. That's the quietest irony of the entire night. He paid for this jet in the tens of millions and crewed it with one of his best pilots. And he's spending both to take a selfie with a 1950s relic, while accidentally leaving his Tesla unlocked with the windows down. While he preens off the lead's wing, the wingman has quietly restructured the entire engagement. He hasn't noticed yet. The J-11 peels off formation, snaps hard right, and drops below the bombers into the cloud deck. The wingman's infrared feed catches the heat bloom the instant the afterburner ignites. The EWO calls it across their frequency. Contact, lead 8 o'clock low, burner lit, setting up again. He's rigging a second pass, dropping below formation, swinging wide to the bombers 7 o'clock, then pulling his nose up to come at them off the lead's rear quarter. He already threw one close pass in 2 minutes of shadow and got nothing back. Now he wants to reach into the airplane and break something loose. He claws up out of the clouds at full military power, pitches the nose across the lead's track, and hoses scalding turbine breath straight down the inboard intakes. Then he levels just beneath them in a hard right bank, watching for the flinch he came for. Number 1. Engine surges. The exhaust gas temperature needle rockets past redline. Number 2 surges a heartbeat later. The commander stands on the rudder as 34,000 pounds of thrust evaporates from the left side and tries to swing the nose around. It's a textbook gun run, except he's not carrying guns. He's carrying exhaust. Dump enough scalding exhaust down a bomber's left intake side, and both engines on that wing choke simultaneously. At this weight, that much thrust lost from one side wants to roll the airplane onto its back before the crew can stop it. Here's what's happening inside those engines. A jet engine is particular about what it eats. It demands clean, smooth, high-volume air marching steadily down its throat. Feed it something else, turbulence, debris, another jet's scalding exhaust, and the compressor blades stop biting. The whole system chokes. That's a compressor stall. A bang you feel in your chest. Sometimes a tongue of flame shoots out the intake. Thrust disappears instantly. The computer cuts fuel before the engine destroys itself, then spins it back up automatically. Picture a sprinter in full flight taking a fist square to the sternum. He isn't finishing that stride. He needs a moment to find his wind before he goes again. Dumping hot exhaust down a bomber's intakes isn't merely rude flying. It's a deliberate maneuver designed to choke two engines at once, like your neighbor revving a leaf blower straight through your kitchen window. Except your kitchen is moving at 525 miles per hour. Both of Saucy 1-1's engines relight within 8 seconds. The commander catches the yaw. The bomber never yields an inch of altitude. Up front, the pilots exchange a glance, but not a word. 2 stalls and a clean recovery would be a rough 10 seconds in a simulator, and an even rougher one over open water at night. They just flew it without keying the radio once. Down in the EW station, the EWO's hand settles onto a consent switch. One flip, and the bomber stops listening politely and starts screaming back. The flanker just dumped engine wash at point-blank range deliberately, in a spot where a stall could have cost an engine permanently. The EWO has every authority to throw that switch. He doesn't. That switch arms the AN/ALQ-172, the bomber's active electronic warfare suite. It's a combat-proven jammer that's been protecting B-52s for decades, scrambling virtually every radar type a missile uses to find you, several simultaneously. Think of it as a smart speaker that listens to every radar in the room and instantly determines which one is trying to hurt you, then decides whether to jam it, ghost it, or just write it all down for later use. At 130 feet, later was the right call. The moment that jammer goes active, the encounter flips from quiet collection to active engagement, and the peacetime rules for a night like this are written in stone. You do not throw the first electronic punch. So he sits on his hands, and every second of restraint is another second of tape rolling. This isn't panic jamming and stick fighting. The intercept is being flown with genuine skill. Tight spacing held on a 488,000-pound airplane in complete darkness. Hands most air forces can't replicate. That's what makes what comes next so telling. Skill was never this Chinese pilot's deficit tonight. His problem is that the intimidation playbook only works on a target willing to play along. These 2 American crews treat his best flying as background noise. They're not even impressed. They're just logging his control response times and waiting for him to wear himself out. He's spent a close pass, a formation shadow, and a face full of jet wash. And all he's bought is 2 cockpits that won't give him so much as a flinch. Breaking away to set up a third run, the Chinese pilot has no idea what just unfolded in Sassy 1-1's cockpit. From his perspective, the bomber is still sitting rock steady, and the silence where jamming should be reads as either American softness or American gear that can't keep pace. On both counts, he's completely wrong. 2 passes down, and he's collected everything he came for. Wake turbulence on the lead, jet wash through the intakes, not a twitch from either airplane. He should be done. He isn't. The most dangerous thing he does all night lies ahead. The wingman's crew catches it first. The flanker's heat signature spikes to full afterburner, both engines well past military power. Climb rate blooming underneath. The Chinese pilot is pitching up hard from below and behind, and the EWO sees it the second the numbers move. He's coming up vertical, straight between the 2 bombers. He's committing to the maneuver of the night. Nose climbing past 30 degrees, both burners cooking, climbing through the bomber's altitude block on a track that'll thread him right between both airplanes. In his mind, this is aggressive but recoverable. 1 bomber off his 10 o'clock, open sky to his right, and the exit dive once he tops out. In his mind, there's only 1 bomber up here with him. The climb is locked in. A fighter that rotates vertical at full afterburner has nowhere good to go in a hurry. He's trading airspeed for altitude, the way a kid pedaling up a steep hill trades momentum. Halfway up, he's past the point of return. Every second he holds the climb is a second he can't just roll level and leave. Misjudge the top of a full burner vertical, and the jet hangs there, nose high with no airspeed to fly with. The worst place in the sky to run out of options. The wingman's EWO has been reading his energy state since the burner first lit, and the math agrees with the geometry. He's going to run out of sky between the 2 bombers, not above them. At 26,000 feet and still accelerating, he bores up into the gap. Both bombers hold dead level on the original line. Both sets of pilots keep their hands light on the yokes. No flinch, no correction. 2 fixed points hanging in the dark. And here's the part that demands more nerve than anything the flanker is doing. The urge to edge away from a fighter coming up through your altitude is overwhelming. And giving into it is how a near miss becomes a smoking hole. So the crews sit on their hands and trust the brief. The flanker tears up through 30,000 feet between them. 1,000 feet of air to Saucy 1-1 off his left. 2,000 feet to Saucy 1-2 off his right. The wake off a fighter pulling 7 Gs in burner hammers both bombers and rolls clean through them. Neither one breaks. Halfway up the climb, the search pulse. The EWOs have heard tapping all night, suddenly tightens. Faster, steadier, locked into a rhythm on the formation. The Type 1493 had been coasting in low-power search from the start, and now, mid-climb, it leans in hard and snaps to track mode, a tighter, high-fidelity look that stops just short of a full weapons lock. The pulse rhythm shifts the instant it does, and that's the gift that keeps giving. In the same 30 seconds, the EWOs have his radar nailed in both modes it operates. He came up here to ravel 2 bombers. He's filling out their threat library instead. At 32,000 feet, he runs out of climb, rolls right to set up the exit dive away from the lead and into what he's convinced himself is empty sky. Something catches in the corner of his eye, motion where his sensors swore there was nothing. He looks again. A second B-52, fully lit, 8 engines burning bright in the infrared, fills the right side of his canopy, less than half a mile off. He's a fighter pilot. The geometry reads like a heartbeat to him, and the geometry is a trap. He's boxed by two 488,000-pound airplanes, and he committed to this climb seconds ago. It's the fighter pilot version of pulling into a parking spot and realizing the SUVs on both sides are too close to open your doors. Except he's doing it vertically at 30,000 feet. The exit dive he planned runs straight into a bomber he never tracked. The escape behind him runs back through the leads track he already crossed. Climbing takes him into the combined wake of two heavies doing 525 miles per hour. There's no clean way out of the corner he just flew himself into. From Saucy 1-2's flight deck, the whole thing unfolds in silence and infrared. A flanker standing on his tail a quarter mile off the wing, running out of ideas in real time. Close enough now that the co-pilot can make out the shapes of the air-to-air missiles hung on the rails, beyond visual range hunters built to knock down the very airplane he's sitting in. So he takes the only door left. He rolls hard and shoves the nose down, diving across the wingman's flight path with maybe 600 feet to spare. Both engines screaming. He drops away into the dark. Both bombers feel his wake pass. Neither one breaks. Leveling at 18,000 feet in the cloud deck, his threat receiver finally goes quiet. The B-52s never jammed him, never maneuvered, never gave up a foot of altitude. They flew their original line from start to finish, while he wrapped himself around a stunt that nearly punched his ticket. From his cockpit, the harassment landed on stone, nothing to show for it. From the bomber cockpits, he just walked off with the richest passive collection of his career. He disengages. The bombers press on with the mission. He flies home with no earthly idea what he left behind on 2 American hard drives. To me, that's where the real story lives, not in the flying, but in what nobody said.